This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Coming up in October's Forest Ramble Podcast, Sabri Lamouchi is the Manager of the Month with 13 points from 15. We also talk about Brice Samba and, unfortunately, stuff off the pitch. Welcome to October's Forest Ramble Podcast. I am delighted to be joined, as usual, by Mr. Stephen Toplis.
Hello.
And Mr. Maradona of the Midlands.
Charmed, I'm sure.
And just to let you know that you may have noticed something a little bit different at the start of this podcast. You may have noticed a little trail coming up there. Basically, we've been doing this podcast for about 3 or 4 years now, and it doesn't make us any money. In fact, it costs us a little bit of money, but we do it because we like it. But we've now joined this Big Heads Media Network, which means that as the listener, there'll be a little trail at the beginning, and there'll be a couple of ads in the middle, but we promise they're not going to be any longer than about 30 seconds at a time. We promise you that it won't have any effect on us editorially. We'll still produce the same intelligent Nottingham Forest content we've always strived to do. And with that in mind, let's start off by talking about the latest news from the City Ground. Sabri Lamouchi is the EFL Championship Manager of the Month. Maradona of the Midlands, is that well deserved?
Yes, I think so. I think we couldn't really have gone much better in terms of league football, just dropping 2 points all month. And so, yeah, it's pretty much a deserved award.
OK, Stephen.
Thoroughly deserved. It's the product of a really good month in September and into October a bit as well with the form that we've had. And it's a really nice sort of accolade for a Forest manager to win. It's the first time for a few years that a Reds manager has picked up the award. To be unbeaten in the league through September, to go up to joint top as well, it's thoroughly deserved.
So, was the last Manager of the Month, was that Stuart Pearce?
Billy Davis, I believe.
Was it? OK. I mean, of course, the thing is, because initially when he got the award, I thought Stuart Pearce, and I thought, well, that didn't end well. But this is entirely different, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've got a much stronger base this time than Stuart Pearce. With a couple of injuries sort of railroaded our season that time, but hopefully this time we're in a stronger position. And also the club's in a much stronger position, isn't it? Yeah, we was obviously at the height of the Fawaz regime and all the sort of illogical things that used to happen behind the scenes there. Hopefully we run in a much more logical way now and a much more stable background for the manager to succeed. OK, but also he has got a 1-year contract. He's very much aware of that, to the point whereby he just rents a flat in town and he's not moved his family over because he knows that at any stage it could all, be over just like that. I tried to click my fingers there, it didn't work. Stephen, I mean, what is it that Sabri is doing well that means that Forest are being so consistent?
He's made Forest a very difficult side to play against. They're hard to beat. They compete well in the midfield, first and foremost. They're stronger at the back than they have been in recent seasons. And up front, they are clinical. We've had a few games where we've been up against it and in terms of chances created have been second best. Mm-hmm. But we've come out of those games with victories. If you look at Stoke, for example, that was a really good example of a game where we were up against it for long periods. But we stayed in it, got a goal back, and then before long it was 3-1 and the game was more or less won. And it was a clinical attacking performance when it needed to be. So there's a really good balance throughout the team of things that are working right now.
Yeah, and I would say that a couple of things that show that off. Number one, Joe Worrell is just a completely different player. I mean, we always knew he had talent, but in terms of his mindset, in terms of how he conducts himself on the pitch, all the passion that was evident is still there. But now he's really added a layer of resilience and solidity that was always the flappy bit about him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess it's one word: maturity. He's matured into the role. The year away in Glasgow would have toughened him up, not only off the pitch but on the pitch as well. He's sort of living on his own for the first time, I guess, and it's a tough league, the Scottish League. It's maybe not the highest quality, but when he played for Rangers, every other team just comes for you, and that would have really helped his development.
And for what it's worth as well, anytime there's anything about Joe Worrell, he posts something on social media, you always get a few Rangers fans come out of the woodwork saying, "No, but what about that performance against Kilmarnock or this, that and the other?" And on the comments section on The Athletic, there was an article about Joe Worrell, and I did sort of make them. There was a guy there sort of saying, "Oh, well, his head's not right," and I said, "Yeah, it wasn't before, but this season he's just shown a huge amount more maturity."
Yeah, and I think playing alongside Michael Dawson's helped him as well. You can see him sort of picking up some of the traits of Michael Dawson. Even just during the course of the season, you've seen an improvement in Joe from the first game. He's just sort of a lot calmer, a lot more controlled with his actions, and he's just sort of seems to be improving exponentially at the moment.
And that kind of level-headedness as well, I think that's shown off not just in terms of his performance, but I think that when he first got into the team, obviously at a less stable time, I think he was probably trying to do too much, wasn't he? I mean, there's that famous interview where he said, I don't think there's many other players who care as much as I do, or something to that effect. And actually, I think that now he'd probably approach those kinds of situations slightly differently. Don't you think, Stephen?
Yeah, he's a few years older now since that interview, so he's constantly maturing, and he's got more first-team experience. And you have to remember, of course, the club was a bit of a basket case at that point, with takeovers not going through and the threat of relegation to League One. It probably wasn't the best environment to be trying to bring in a young, inexperienced player, but that was the situation. And I think under those circumstances, Joe performed fairly admirably for his first run of senior first team football.
I think that's the thing, is that he maybe to his detriment, he was trying to be a senior player when he was still a rookie. And although it was lovely the times that he got the armband and everything, it might have been a bit too soon. The other bit, when it comes to resilience, there's a brilliant clip which came after the Brentford match, which I shared via our Twitter feed. Basically, a clip of Samba So just literally mowing down an opposition player in a totally fair way. But he was just an absolute colossus. And I think we talked about it last month, didn't we? That kind of strength and resolve that he has, and he has definitely been one of the big signings, one of the big kind of characters. Even if you don't always notice what he does, the influence he has on the pitch is just astonishing.
You're seeing the effects of having a big burly midfielder in there in Championship football. It's those kind of players. We've not had many of them, or any of them at times, over the last couple of years at Forest. So having a player like him, and I've put Alpha Samido in that bracket as well, those physical midfielders who put themselves about, but they can also play a bit. They've helped to make Forest much more competitive in games. We're not losing the midfield battles. We're strong and we're competitive. And he's added a layer of steel and a layer of competitiveness that wasn't in this team before his arrival.
And of course, Ben Watson, the Ginger Fernandinho, has been able to reap the benefits, because it means that the physical donkey work he doesn't have to do, which means that he can concentrate. The real difference has been his positioning and his kind of reading of the game, because he's not to concentrate. He's got someone else to do the physical donkey work for him.
Yeah, I think that's really helped him, and it just provides that little base in front of the defence, just to sort of just an extra level of solidity, and just about Samido and Sao as well. It's just not their physical side; they get around the pitch as well. For the guys that are that big, they cover a hell of a lot of ground as well, which really, really helps in a game. It helps with closing down, moving attacks forward. It's really, really a positive attribute to have in the team.
I think as well. We'll come on to the other Samba, Brice Samba. We'll come on and talk about him later, because I think it's fair to say that he's very much the man of the moment, both on the pitch and amongst the fans. And we'll talk about him a little bit later. Stephen, there was a blip in the last month, which was, all right, it's not in the league and it's a very different sort of situation, but you went to the Arsenal match. Tell us about that.
good day out or good evening out to get down to the Emirates Stadium and be at a Premier League ground, a top six side. That was great. And on the pitch, you could just see a real gulf in quality between a top six Premier League side and Forest and the position that we're in at the moment. It was just the speed with which Arsenal played the game was so much different to what the Forest players are used to week in, week out in the Championship. And it does show you the step up that you've got to make to be not just a Premier League team, but to be a solid, established Premier League side. When I look at it and say, use that game as a little barometer, just something where you, as a team, as Forest are, where you've got to go, the levels that you've got to reach if you do want to be a Premier League club. It hasn't affected us, thankfully, too much in the league. We've gone on and we've continued to take points and win games since that Arsenal defeat. So, yeah, it was overall a good evening out, a good opportunity for the players to play against a top side. And I think overall it's not been too much of a damaging experience in terms of results.
It was just unfortunate that we had some key injuries that day. So players who hadn't been playing, like Bostock and Semedo and Mir, they would have come in undoubtedly to that game.
Yeah, I think Bostock and Semedo would have. They were big misses.
Yeah, and that would have made a hell of a difference. We probably would have still lost, but I don't think it would be anywhere near as close to 5-0. So we were a bit unfortunate with the timing and the injuries coming when they did. And
also, Arsenal are a very technical team, aren't they? You know, although they are no longer managed by Arsene Wenger, they are still kind of reaping the benefits and the disbenefits of Wenger ball, aren't they? So I think that's something that is it's something that means that they are the kind of team that will be able to.
Yeah, but another part, I think if we put out our strongest team, if we didn't have so many games during that week, I think we probably would have won. If Dawson been playing, Samba Sao, Lewis Graben, the full team, and they had a week's rest, I think they would have gone there and beaten that Arsenal team. So I don't think that's
okay. So the only I suppose criticism is too strong a word, but the thing that raised my eyebrows when I saw the team sheet and I thought, oh, they'll probably be playing Adoma and Lolly on the wing and then playing Thiago Silva as a false nine. And then it turned out that Adoma was trying to play up front, which, you know, he's had a long and distinguished career in the Championship, and I don't think he's ever played as a centre forward. So, I mean, clearly that didn't work, did it, Steve?
No, it's Albert's got his qualities, obviously, but being up front isn't one of them in terms of a central forward position, because we couldn't get hold of the ball in that area. There wasn't somebody there who could hold the ball up, who could run it a bit and help Forest gain territory when they did have possession. So the ball just kept coming back from Arsenal. And I think that the times when Adoma and Lolly are good at kind of making the ball sticky is when they are going down those channels, isn't it? And especially when they're playing as inverted wingers. And we've seen Adoma be very, very strong in the league in those times when he comes on with 15 minutes to go and he just makes the ball stick at the correct end of the pitch to try and protect the team. He's very, very good at that. So playing him up front, it didn't really work. I mean, having said that, I think the point that both of you have made there is that it could have been damaging to morale, but it really wasn't. And again, this is a sign of the momentum and consistency that we've had in the last month, which is that this blip, the fans have been willing to say, you know what, it was nice to test ourselves, but the best team won, even with them playing kids. We didn't have our first team out. We didn't have a centre forward. So we did what we could. Didn't work out. You know what? It was fun. We were never going to win the competition anyway. Lamouchi had said beforehand, we're not going to win it, so let's just enjoy it. But his conciliatory tone afterwards, I thought, was also very impressive.
Yeah, he just has a personality, just and a charisma to him, which makes you want to listen and believe what he says. It's really a valuable skill to have as a manager, and I think we're benefiting from it.
I think we all agreed we really liked Aitor Karanka and we really liked the way he spoke, but actually you see a different... Again, in retrospect, you look back and you see that actually Karanka was being quite spiky and quite difficult at times.
What I've always said is a Forest manager needs to be a leader. I think we always do well, because better when we've got a leader, a real leader as a manager. I mean, for all the criticism he gets these days, Billy Davies did fulfil that role
absolutely,
very well
for
a while. And it just is because of the size of the club we are, and we just need a figurehead just to sort of fall behind sometimes. And he's doing that brilliantly well.
And now again with retrospect, and Stephen, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. Karanka, the trouble is that he had that big squad, and therefore he wasn't able to create that sense of unity. Now, that whole thing that I keep going on about a team being greater than some of its parts, Billy Davies engendered that. Again, you look back and you think Karanka never managed that because he just had like 35 odd players like banging around, and Lamouchi has made the decision, right, I've got my core 25, and it means that Pantilimon and some of the others, they're not going to get a sniff. They're not going to be close. They're going to train separately. They're going to eat separately. They're going to do other things separately. It's harsh and it potentially bad business sense when you're paying them a lot of wages. But in terms of the unity of the core part of the squad, it's made a big difference.
Yeah, when it's going well, and for that core team, as you say, it works brilliantly well. It may just harm us, I think, long term. Just if we get a terrible injury crisis. I mean, that Arsenal game I thought was an ideal game for somebody like Jakob to come in, maybe, because we were missing. For me, from what I've seen them play in the last couple of years, there's really no difference in the quality between Jakob and Watson. So it just seems a little bit harsh on him to say you're bombed out. Just in case something does happen to Watson during the course of the season, it would be useful to have him in close to the squad. But Lamouchi's obviously gone a different route where he just didn't want to make it near.
I think it's that balance, isn't it? It's like, is it causing more harm in the long term to have those players who aren't going to play and aren't going to be a core part of the squad? Is it more harm for them in the long term to be separated, even if it means in the short term there's a couple of matches where you're kind of going, actually, it would have been useful to have someone there?
I think it's how you approach it. One example in Forest's not too distant past was Gary Megson, who famously banished some senior pros to the training ground and didn't want them anywhere near the city ground or near training. And I suppose Lamouchi is doing something similar, but he's not quite doing it in the full-blown authoritarian style of Gary Megson.
A lot more charming way, maybe.
Yeah, I think he'll be doing it in a fairer and probably a less drastic manner.
And luckily, there's not many of them left. Actually, if you look at it, there's Pantilimon, Jakob, and Clough maybe at the most. We did well getting rid of sort of 3 or 4 players. If we hadn't got rid of say Bridcut, Murphy and Cummins, I think it would have been a bigger problem because there would have been a bigger group of players to sort of deal with and have hanging around.
And crucially as well, for players like Bridcut, for example, and Murphy, all accounts are that they're good, honest pros. So to move on to Bolton and actually be able to make a potentially a big difference to the future of Bolton Wanderers. I mean, I was slightly surprised to see that Bridcut was immediately made the Bolton captain, even though he's only on loan there for a few months. But that's a measure of the kind of the standard that people think of him. It's just that it wasn't going to be at Forest. So in that sense, it sounds as though Lamouchi has, and potentially the wider club, have made a real effort to kind of treat those players with a certain amount of respect, as opposed to the very kind of public bombing out that the likes of Rodgers and Johnson had under Gary Megson.
Hi, everybody. I'm RJ Metzger.
And I'm Rachel Metzger.
And we're the Skeptical Skeptics.
Each week we talk about all the crazy things in the world, ranging from the paranormal to Bigfoot to UFOs.
And we look at it from the perspective of the believer, the skeptic, and everything in between.
So come check us out on the MSC Podcast Network.
Or go to skepticalskeptics.com and follow us at SkepSkepPod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Let's have a think about some of the highlights in terms of results. I mean, to me, I'm just gonna say this out and out, because Forest on their Twitter feed have said, what's been your highlight of the season so far? And I would go probably the win against Fulham, which featured that amazing team goal, and then also just because it was so unexpected, and at this moment in time, it seems to have represented a real turning point in the fortunes of the club. But the first month of the season, up to the first international break, was very much about playing teams who are, for the most part, going to be up there. And with the probable exception of the match against Swansea, which kicked off this period of time, this one's been about playing some of the kind of minnows is too strong a word, but some of the kind of the mid-table and lower league teams, and kind of the ones where you have to really grind it out, Stephen. So tell us what give us a rundown of what happened.
Well, to go back to the start of this period, Forest went away to Swansea, who at the time were top of the table, and that was seen as a game very similar to the Fulham one, in that you're playing a team that's at the top away from home. That could be a potential game that you lose when you're away at a top side like that. But Forest went there and got a 1-0 win, and that, I think I put that up there with the Fulham result as a game which shows what this Forest team are capable of, but also to give the players belief that they've gone to a team like Swansea, who were top, and they've beaten them.
I think there was a certain symbolism as well in the way in which we got the winning goal. Last 6 or 7 minutes prior to loads of stoppage time, which seems to be a feature of the modern game. But the fact that it was a goal on the break, Graben, who has always unfairly attracted that much kind of ire from people. He's not working hard enough, he doesn't enjoy himself. Well, you know what? If he wasn't working and he didn't enjoy himself, he wouldn't have run, 60 yards down the right wing, then actually looked up and placed the ball for Semedo to actually be there and be able to put that in the net. I thought, again, in terms of symbolism, that goal was almost up there with the team goal against Fulham.
Yeah, it was. And just back on Graben, his running's been exceptional this season. Just that the force and power that he's showing for that goal against Swansea and the second goal against Fulham as well. I think it just showed how much his injury last year was holding him back, because there's no way he could have had that acceleration last season.
I also wonder if there was something about the coaching as well, because he's never been a number 9, and I think that maybe because Karanka was a defender and Lamouchi is more of a flair player, in terms of the coaching they're able to offer, maybe there's something there which means that it can be, all right, Lewis, do you think you can do this? Whereas under Karanka, it's like, well, Graben is there and he's there to score goals, and that's kind of as sophisticated as it got. I'm speculating.
Yeah, it could have been. You see the Karanka approach being a bit more regimented than Lamouchi, and I think Graben just looks like a player now that is really enjoying his football. The way that he's playing, the confidence he's showing.
But he never smiles.
Well, you've always had that with him, but no, he just looks like he's enjoying being part of this team and contributing. He's not scoring goals all the time. He's scoring actually at a decent rate, but he's setting up goals as well, and that's all you can ask for from your lone striker, really.
His shots to goals ratio is pretty much the best in the division at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, he's in real form and he's doing well. And off the back of the Swansea game, we went into a match at home against Barnsley, which is one of these matches where you think it's going to be tough. This is a team that you should be putting away. You've got to find a way of winning, and Forest did, and it was Ben Watson who got his first Forest goal.
After how long? 2.5 years? And his first goal in over 3.5 years?
Yeah, so that was a big 3 points to show that Forest can put away these so-called weaker teams. We then had the Arsenal game, which we've spoken about. Then it was Stoke away a few days after the Arsenal defeat. And that was, as I mentioned earlier, that was a game where Forest were up against a Stoke side that came out and really tried to put them under pressure early on. They scored a goal, but Forest fought back. And, okay, the Lolly goal was gifted to them by Jack Butland and his mistake, but I thought the Sammy Amiobi's goal was fantastic. That header, the way that it was Matty Cash's cross from the right, the way he ran onto that and sort of planted the header into the far corner was
it just wasn't a Forest goal, was it? It was just, we haven't scored. I turned to my dad when we scored. I said, when was the last time Forest scored a goal like that? He said, Gary Birtles.
But you know what, as well, as apart from the style of the goal, the other thing that that epitomises, firstly, it's not the first time, like the Watson goal that you mentioned, and that goal that Amiobi scored, in terms of the kind of the technique and craft that led to the chance being created, were the same, which was we're moving play from one side to the other to find that space, using your players like Lolly, Cash as an overlapping fullback, Cash and Lolly really combining very well together at the moment. And so that's one of those things whereby the craft that's going in there suggests a slightly more expansive style of play than we've had, but with an end product. And against Stoke, all three of the goals, if Stoke were better at defending, we wouldn't have scored any of them. Because with Amiobi's goal, a good defence would have had a centre-half get into the header first. But at the same time, the cross from Cash was fabulous, and Amiobi, the run and actually the use of neck muscles to make that header. I mean, Mrs. Ferraro keeps pointing out, it's like, I don't understand how Amiobi is a football player, because he's got the build of an American footballer, hasn't he? But actually the way he used his power and physical power to score that goal and get that header, no one was going to beat him to that.
No, I was a really, really, really good goal from him. The way that he sort of used that power, but he also guided it into the far top corner. That was, really, really superb goal. And then Graben got on the score sheet as well with a ball in the box where you saw his predatory instinct, and he just got the ball into the far corner for 3-1. So that made it 3-1, and then you had Stoke scoring late on for a...
Oh yeah, that was a black mark, because that's where a specialist right back, and Matty Cash is doing really, really well at right back, but he's not quite a specialist right back yet, and a specialist right back wouldn't have conceded that free kick because they wouldn't have been waving his arms around in the air, and Lamouchi told him off publicly in the post-match pressers for doing that.
So after that, we go away to Blackburn. Now it was a strange match in that neither team really got going, certainly early on, and then it was Blackburn who scored. I think it was a rebound that fell back to the striker from Samba's save. He knocks it in, but then straight from the kickoff, Forest keep hold of the ball and they work it, move it around for a minute or two. Comes to Lolly and he hits one from over 20 yards out into the bottom corner. Within 70 seconds, they're level.
Well, yeah, so the ball was in play for 40 seconds, in which time Blackburn didn't actually touch the ball. I don't think he even got near the ball. So that was the perfect riposte, wasn't it? And then finally, last but not least,
Brentford at home, which down the years has been a bit of a bogey fixture for Forest. They've come to the City Ground, Brentford, and given us a few good hidings down the years. So I was probably a little bit sceptical with this game, just knowing the way that Brentford play and knowing the problems that they've caused Forest in the past. This was an example of a game where Forest just had control. They might not have battered Brentford and created chance after chance after chance, but they had control of the game and they sort of kept Brentford at arm's length, and they got their goal when the opportunity came, and it was Watson again. And great stat, he scored in the 56th minute against Barnsley, and then in the next home game did exactly the same against Brentford. 56th minute, put the ball away. That was a nice finish from him as well, with a corner that was swung in, Worrell with a nice knockback, and then Watson just come onto it.
Training ground.
Yeah, it really was.
And also, Watson lost his footing in the process, so for him to get such a good hit on it was very impressive.
And what I liked about that, just to come back to the point you made earlier about the squad unity, the way that everybody just piled in on Watson, because he'd lost his footing when he'd hit the shot, before he had a chance to get back up and celebrate, all the players jumped on him and piled in, and that was great to see.
And of course, again, maybe particularly with the goal against Barnsley, but to a certain extent with the Brentford goal as well, again shows the difference it makes having a Samba Sow or an Alpha Semedo alongside Watson, because it's giving him the licence to get over the halfway line, which we didn't really see under Karanka, because it wasn't his role under Karanka. His role was just exclusively to sit back. Now, we know that the legs aren't what they used to be for Watson because he's 34, but the sprint he made to score the goal against Barnsley, you know what? That's a sign of a player who's playing with desire and a player who really wants to make the most of his situation, isn't it?
I think it's really good management from Lamouchi, what he's done with Watson. Could have been very easy for him to come into Forest and buy a player to play in that position, but he's arrived at the club. He's assessed what he's got available to him, and he's getting something out of a player who maybe under the previous management wouldn't have had much of a future at Forest.
Okay, well, so it's been a good month, and we will talk a little bit more about one or two of the key protagonists, in particular our goalkeeper Brice Samba, in just a minute after this.
The Forest Ramble sketch by Jeremy Davis. There are always two perspectives when a goal is scored, that of the attacking team and that of the defending one. Was it pure footballing brilliance that carved open the opposition, or sloppy defending that left the barn door wide open? Forest's Goal of the Month for September competition, hosted on the club's YouTube channel, provides some particularly good illustrations of this yin and yang. Watch Alpha Semedo's goal against Swansea. As Lewis Graben intercepts the ball in his own half, a solitary defender chases after him whilst a couple of his teammates rush back towards their own goal, without appearing to check where the attackers might be. As Graben brushes aside the challenge, Swansea's defenders watch admiringly, apparently pursuing a rigid zonal marking system that revolves around not marking the zones where your opponents might actually be. Keep your eye on goalkeeper Freddie Woodman, though. They say communication is one of the goalkeeper's most important skills, and Woodman is communicating more energetically than an Amazon Alexa relaying all our personal data back to Faceless Corporation of America, Inc. As the move begins, Woodman is retreating from his starting position on the penalty spot whilst pointing confusingly towards the opposite side of the pitch. Possibly he's just spotted a celebrity, or maybe a UFO, and is trying to attract the attention of the relevant authorities before remembering that he's in a game of professional football with 5 minutes to go. As Graben gets into the area and shapes to cross, Woodman puts out his hands in a gesture that suggests he's just a bit fed up at the whole situation before the ball comes across and he decides he'd better try a bit of goalkeeping, flinging himself acrobatically across the goal as the ball goes the other side of him and into the roof of the net. Semedo's arrival clearly coming as a surprise to the Swansea defenders who have ambled back into the area, possibly drawn to Woodman's fluorescent pink boots like curious flies to a bright light. All 3 goals from the win at Stoke City made the shortlist, 2 of them fittingly featuring some good old-fashioned wing play worthy of Stoke legend Sir Stanley Matthews in his 1950s heyday, along with some defending that might have come from considerably further back in history than that, say the Jurassic era. Jack Butland, having fallen out of contention for the England football team, seems to be auditioning for a place at full-back for the English rugby boys at their World Cup, trying to catch the high ball under pressure. Sadly for him, in this particular up and under, he ended up firmly under. Sammy Omyobi's header for the second goal was a thing of beauty, but you still don't expect championship defenders to watch on quite so admiringly, aesthetically pleasing or not. As for Graben's winner, the UFO from the Swansea game must have reappeared and blasted Stoke's defenders with some sort of death ray, the only possible explanation for their legs collectively giving way. At least the beaten Stoke players could take some consolation from the fact that we're not alone in the universe after all.
And we're back, so thank you to Jeremy for this month's Forest Ramble sketch, and let's go straight back into it. I have got a quote here from Sabri Lamouchi. I was lucky in my life to work with the best keepers in the world, players like Buffon and Barthez. They were crazy, very crazy. The keepers, they are different to other players. Why is that? I don't know, but I know you need it. I can play without a striker, I could manage without a centre-back if I wanted, but it is impossible to play without a keeper. Maradona in the Midlands, talk to me about Brice Samba.
Well, he's been brilliant, hasn't he? He's just come in and just looked like a top-class goalkeeper from minute one. He's unflappable, he's good with crosses, he's a great shot stopper, he has a calm authority about him, and he's not short of personality either. He's been interacting with the fans and become very, very popular. Also, from Matty Cash, who apparently is very good friends with him now. I don't know if there's a language barrier there. Kashi!
And his distribution is just ridiculous. His shot stopping is brilliant. He's a fantastic goalkeeper and a big, big signing. He's a legend, a proper funny guy. Does everything right on and off the pitch. He's a great asset to the club. He can be quiet, but I get on really well with him. I sit next to him in the dressing room, but he can also pick me out with a 40-yard pass when we're not sat right next to each other. He can put it right on your foot if you want it there. He's got it all, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. And it's astonishing that a goalkeeper that good could come in. I mean, I'd never even heard of him before.
Yeah, as you said, we're not going to get bullied this season. And Samba, in his own way, is an example of that, because whereas Muric, obviously, he's young and he's looked a bit flappy, mentality-wise, Muric has, even in the handful of matches he's played for us, he showed he is the kind of player who gets overawed and a bit bullied. And Samba has just come in, and you look at the way that Samba comes across. He's one of those, old-fashioned goalkeepers. He'll come and get a hand on it, even if it means clearing everything out in front of him. In terms of how he acts when he's got the ball at his feet, again, he's not fazed. He's got a presence about him. So that idea of not being bullied actually shows through right from the goalkeeper, which isn't something we've had for probably not since Lee Camp.
No, that confidence that he gives to the rest of the team, it really does permeate through the side, because the defence have complete confidence in him. The midfield do as well, especially if they know that they can be in a position on the pitch and he'll find them with a good pass.
I'm Midnight Agent Raw.
And I'm Okame.
We are the Super Media Bros Podcast.
Each week, we give a comedically informative take on movies,
Music,
television,
video games,
and much more.
Put your shades on and listen to all episodes on supermediabrospodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Yeah,
Shades on.
we're off.
This is going to sound disrespectful. I can't avoid that, and it's not meant to be disrespectful. But one of the big changes that we've seen with the recruitment policy, with the management, is also that one of the reasons we're doing better is we've just got better players than we had before.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and it can't be overlooked.
And Brice Samba is a great example of that. Yeah. So, in fairness, Pantolimon, he came in when he was a better keeper than what we had before.
Yep.
And then Brice Samba has come in and he's just a quantum leap ahead. And again, if you think about the Lee Camp comparison, so 10 years ago, Samba's similar age to what Camp was 10 years ago. And he's got that kind of really indomitable kind of aura about him. Clearly, there's a unity amongst him and the back four, which is, again, something that we saw.
I don't know if you saw, but at the Brentford game, the banner in the lower Bridgeford, which is brilliant design. But there's a great shot that somebody's taken from the stand itself, looking out to the pitch, and I think it's after Ben Watson scores. Samba's on his knees in the exact same pose as he is on the banner, and there's a shot of the banner in the background. You can see Samba doing the same
but
pose.
The thing is that he turned around at the final whistle and he just turned to those fans, and he just. His first reaction when the whistle went was to turn to the fans, smile and stick his arms in the air. And it shows that he realises how lucky he is to have that relationship with the fans. But also, let's not do him down. He's worked on that. Is it too early to say Brice Samba's the best goalkeeper we've had for at least 10 years?
Maybe a little bit early. We don't want to jinx him. Let's let him get a season under his belt, and then we'll judge it properly. Then is it? But he couldn't have made a better start. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. And then going back to that idea of that unity. So obviously, if Matty Cash is really good friends with him, Matty Cash at right back, I'd say, apart from the flappy hands thing at Stoke, you wouldn't have thought he'd play so many matches with such an intensity. And actually be pretty blooming good.
He's getting better with every game. He seems to be taking to the role as well with his progression there. He had to flappy hands at Stoke, but on the whole, he's been solid. He's done his defensive duties, but he's also got the asset of being capable in the opposition half.
Well, his overlapping play, and I think this is also why Yuri Ribeiro has been preferred in quite a few matches at left back, because having those overlapping fullbacks when you've got a Watson who can just drop in and in a way that for Forest we haven't seen since Ricky Shimaka was playing at the base of the diamond under Paul Hart. So comes in as an auxiliary defender, affords that little bit of protection, and that means that the fullbacks have the licence to be able to get forward. And that's been a real key feature of Forest play, but in quite a subtle way. And actually, this is going back to the whole thing about Sabri being the manager of the month. In a way, there's a bit of me that kind of says, I'm not that fussed if Sabri doesn't get manager of the month, because I kind of like the fact that Forest have just very quietly and consistently crept up. I kind of like Forest being under the radar. I think that's working for us quite nicely.
Yeah, it's a good position to be in because, the spotlight isn't on you. And it's quite funny because when the manager of the month is awarded or the championship team of the week, there's always people on the Forest timeline on Twitter who start making comments about, oh, well, so-and-so should be in this. Why have we not got more players in this? And I don't care. I'm quite happy to not have players being highlighted and singled out for, certainly on a national scale. Let's just crack on and do what we're doing.
So our last manager of the month, Billy Davis, it's been well documented that in his first spell, he was doing it with bluster. And that actually probably cost us in those playoff semi-finals. I don't think you will see Lamouchi doing this, and I don't think that we'll see any members of the squad doing this. So, again, sort of there's a quote here from Adoma, Uncle Albert, as he's known, and he says here that the manager is great with his communication. He delivers the message that we've got many games left to play and that everyone will be needed. If you're not in the starting lineup, you can still play a part. And one of the things that's happened, obviously we lost Michael Dawson. Firstly, Chema came in the match where Dawes went off against Stoke. It did absolutely fine. Toby Figueiredo comes in against Blackburn, one of the best players on the pitch, and then loses his place to Chema again. And in amongst all of that, Joe Worrell's shifting from left to right to left again and to right again. And there's a certain seamlessness that's there in terms of the players know what they need to do.
Yeah, I think that's been quite a key point that's been made in some of the interviews as well. That they do come out and say every player knows what their job is. There's no sort of grey areas. They know what's expected of them from the manager. And I think that we're reaping the dividends for that on the pitch.
But they also say that they enjoy training. So working hard, again, using the analogy of Sergeant Major Megson, working hard by itself isn't enjoyable. So clearly, Lamouchi's finding a way of making it fun. Whether it's to do, I don't know if it's to do with the work they do with the ball or the type of training they do. But there's a togetherness and a sophistication that we're seeing there, which is possibly a bit cliched, bearing in mind Lamouchi's nationality, but a sophistication there that means that the players really look as if they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah, and it seems like Sabri has communicated well with the players exactly how he wants to play and exactly what he wants from each and every one of them. So you're seeing that translate to the pitch in terms of just a confidence and a real sort of unity as well in the players. They all know what each other's doing. They all know what their responsibilities and roles are in the team, and it's translating in results as well. Mm-hmm. And performances where we are getting points from games which under previous managers we probably wouldn't have done.
Well, and going back to the first month, it's a bit of a sort of a tired old adage, but you're not surprised to see Forest getting results, maybe a surprise result away at Fulham or something like that. Even actually the result at Swansea, in a way, I didn't actually expect Forest to win that, but in that sense. But however, I wouldn't have been at all surprised if we'd had a cheeky home defeat against Brentford or if we'd struggled to get anything out of the Barnsley match.
Well, I think it's a Stoke game. I think historically when we've been on a good run and we're on the verge of going top of the league or something, we always lose it. And I was sitting there fully expecting us to lose that game. And when Michael Dawson went 1-0 down, Michael Dawson goes off. I thought to myself, well, there we go. Season over. It's happening again. This is the beginning of the end. And just for them to sort of turn it around in that game and to keep on winning and to win the game and to go top of the league with the expectations that were on them, then it's brilliant. It's a brilliant sign.
And it's not good for Dawes because, obviously he's injured and he's the captain. But what does it say that actually we haven't missed him as much in a way that we massively missed him last season, because the players, by having that greater sense of unity, the leadership element can come from off the pitch. It can come from Watson, but it also comes from the players knowing what they're doing. which means that you don't need to have that kind of on-field field marshal in the same way, that on-field general, I suppose. So maybe that's why we've missed him a little bit less. I just want to move away from the stuff on the pitch and just for literally a couple of minutes. A couple of things I want to talk about in terms of the fans. So obviously, fans are flying high, quite rightly, because things are going so much better than we could have hoped for. And obviously, in the international break, we are second in the table on goal difference. Who could have predicted that? There have been two things that have caused a little bit of infighting, shall we say. Number one, the Supporters Trust. So a member of the Supporters Trust board mentioned that in this day and age, maybe the "Oh, Nottingham is full of fun" chant is not as appropriate as it, or is not as okay as it once was. And it seems to have caused all kinds of kerfuffle amongst the fan base, leading to quite a lot of unpleasantness.
Yeah, I've seen. I mean, you drew my attention to this. I think if you're not on Twitter, you wouldn't have been aware of it initially, but it sort of came to wider notice sort of midweek last week when Radio Nottingham started reporting on it as well. And yeah, it seems there's a vocal group of fans who are determined to keep on singing the song, and with that, I want to make it clear to anybody who disagrees with them that they're wrong in a very forceful and offensive way sometimes.
And also people sending messages to the member of the board who suggested that, which were just downright abusive.
Yeah, it's not right. I don't see why people have to do that.
And so a similar thing, but in a very different way. Okay, the whole thing with the Derby players. Now, I think everyone can agree that the conduct of those Derby players was absolutely disgraceful, including the two senior players involved. Keogh getting into a car being driven by a drunk young teammate, and Tom Huddleston, very helpfully documenting it on his Snapchat feed. And, those are senior professionals. Now, there's a couple of things. Firstly, I think Derby, having initially handled it very well, then after one match, then stick those two players back in the squad as if nothing's happened. And there's lots of whys and wherefores about that.
But even their own fans aren't happy about that, are they?
Well, yeah.
Boos and, they've really shown their feelings on that.
Yeah. Once again, though, I think with both of those issues, I made a comment about... Right, actually, no, I thought it was quite funny when the Forest fans were singing Richard Keogh, "He Should Have Walked Home," because that's kind of joking about the situation. But then there's quite a lot of nasty stuff about Keogh in terms of, well, he deserves to have his legs broken and stuff like that. And I just thought, that's a bit unnecessary. And people say, oh, yes, but as if Keogh, he would have laughed when Chris Cohen hurt himself and stuff like that. I said, well, it doesn't matter. We don't have to stoop to that level. Is it a problem with Forest fans, or is it just a problem is it that social media is a microcosm of society in general?
I think it's two things. I think there are sections of the fan base who perhaps go in for this. Oh, it's just banter and it's all it's all a bit of fun and all that sort of thing.
But is that a Forest thing?
No, it's a wider football thing.
Is it a wider society thing?
Yes, it's a bit of both. Football does mirror society, and football fans mirror society to a degree. You're always going to get those kind of supporters in football who have that kind of attitude and that kind of laddish, banterish attitude, and it's not just limited to Forest. I think as well, in my opinion, Twitter amplifies it. Twitter makes it worse because the anonymity of it means people say things on there which they wouldn't dream of saying to somebody in person.
I think some of them might do.
The way they speak about... I'll give you an example. Kenny Burns. Kenny Burns comes out and does a column in the Evening Post every week. So too does Gary Birtles on a regular basis. Now, you might not always agree with what they say, but some people make it really quite vocal on Twitter that they don't agree with them. They come out with words like dinosaurs or relics or, quite words that can be seen as quite insulting or disrespectful. I'm sure if they bumped into Kenny Burns in the pub, they'd be like, "Hey, Kenny, let's have a picture." You know.
Also,
shake
you
hands
wouldn't
and
say
stuff.
anything to Kenny Burns' face, would you?
Yeah, I think the problem is that because phones are in people's hands constantly now. In the past, you would have had a thought, and it would have been a thought to yourself, and you would have carried on your day, and later on you had another thought, and it just would have got forgotten. Nowadays, there's a lot of people, as soon as they have a thought, straight away it goes on their phone without any sort of censorship or editing or thought about what they're saying or what they're doing. They just have to put whatever they're thinking out there on Twitter, and it's really not a good thing to do. Not every thought you have is a pearl of wisdom and needs to be shared with the whole rest of the world.
I mean, I would say that there's a slight difference with the Kenny Burns and Gary Birtles thing, particularly with Kenny Burns. Right, we all know that the reason why so many of the journalists have jumped ship and gone to The Athletic is because the style of modern free access journalism on the internet is clickbait. It is there to get a reaction, and a bad reaction is still a reaction. All publicity is good publicity. And so some of the stuff that's come out in Kenny Burns' column has been questionable. I'll leave it at that. And you just kind of think, does he actually think that, or has that been written in a certain way to be able to get those clicks because of advertising revenue being the main function there? So I think that's slightly different, but I do think that there's a lot of people who could do with really thinking before, as you said, Maradona in the Midlands, thinking before they kind of commit their thoughts to the internet, where it's actually never going to go away.
The wider issue with this sort of debate over the chant is the attitudes of some people, and even some of the big Forest accounts. These are people accounts that have thousands upon thousands of followers.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I'd call them big Forest accounts, but
they're not official Forest accounts or officially affiliated with
but
the
the
club,
ones with many followers.
Yeah. So they've got a wide audience, and they're just very blasé about the issue, and in some terms have not been very understanding towards Donna or the trust or the stance that they've taken.
Not even blasé, but actually downright rude.
Yeah, perhaps I'm being a bit kind to them there, but yes, and that's been disappointing because as a fan base and as a football club, we want Forest to be inclusive, and the way that some people have reacted to this issue has been far from inclusive and far from understanding, and it's just been quite unpleasant at times.
It's more of a sort of an away game thing, I think, where you get groups of young men.
Get the guys together.
The Larry guys.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest, when I was a teenager, I would have found it funny. I would have found that song sort of hilarious, and you sort of revel in sort of the danger of football and the fact that there's sort of swearing and there's all that. That's seen as a good thing, and you do enjoy it as a young man. Now I feel intensely uncomfortable when I'm at matches and I hear people just the most foul, abusive language
with kids sat next to them.
Children sat next to them. I think, what are you doing? Just think about where you are. Would you use that sort of language in everyday life? And the world has moved on slightly, and football's moved on, and you're not going to... If people want to sing it, they can sing it. There's nobody's going to stop them, but you just have to think to yourself, should I be singing this?
Well,
is it the right thing to do?
I'd like to do what Paul Taylor was trying to do, actually, which is to almost to take away from the rights and wrongs about the chant, because football fans have chants, and personally, I don't like it, but like you, I have sung it in the past and thought it was very funny. So there's potentially an age thing there. Also, I have respect for the fact that there are various women on the Forest Twitter feeds who say, I'm not offended by it. That's fine, that's your prerogative. But the question being is, if you disagree with someone, is the reaction that you get for daring to express your disagreement in proportion? And I think that, on the whole, the answer is no.
No, you've had people coming out with things like, if you don't like it, don't go to football matches, we're going to sing it anyway. What do you expect at a football match? And it's been it's just not been very understanding, I think, towards the issue that's been raised.
I would also point out that there's been a lot of use of the word snowflake, and it's funny that the people who say, people who don't like the chant are snowflakes, well, you're saying, who are you to tell us what chant to sing? Well, who are you to tell us that we can't disagree with you on it?
And at no point has the trust said, or Donna said, stop chanting. Stop
They've
stinging it. You know,
Donna and the Trust expressed an opinion that the chant is maybe outdated and that they would like to get a groundswell of opinion whereby the chant is not acceptable anymore. But they've not said don't do it.
No, and I think some people have also taken umbrage to the Trust because they see it as a small group that doesn't represent them. But I'm pretty sure that group could be open to more people's views and opinions if people actually contacted them in the first place.
I'm a member of the Trust. I pay a small fee, and for that I get I'm part of those consultations. They send me a semi-regular email and they ask my opinions on things. And sure, I think there is a point, which is that they didn't specifically say, do you like this chant? But they did say, do we want inclusion to be a big part of the work that the Trust is doing in conjunction with the club? And the club are going to sit up and take notice because the club actively work with the Trust. Now, to me, these are good things. These are positive steps forward in terms of, in a modern world whereby society is ever more fragmented, for the club to try and find a way of being close to the community around it. So to poo-poo the work of a Trust, I think, is frankly a bit thoughtless, to be honest. But, the bottom line is, people will always disagree with each other. I think the thing is that ultimately, I just say, you know what, can we all just not try to be a little bit more kind to each other? And with that, we bring to the end of this edition of The Moral Maze. So thank you to Stephen, thank you to the Maradona in the Midlands, and thank you to Jeremy. And we will be back with match reports over the next month, and we'll be back with our November podcast when the next international break comes around.